I'm not really sure if I actually do know what God would want from me. And if I were to look for that, I would find a lot of different translations of the Bible, some of which say vastly different things, at least in my experience with hearing about it. And that reads as hypocrisy to me.
Well, let me address a couple of those things. Those are good. Those are really good.
Mm-hmm.
Way to go, Noel.
Yeah, those are
Giving
those are
him some
really
work to
Thank
do.
you.
no. Those are really. I mean, those are good. Those are things that I wondered too. And you hear a lot of
Yeah.
debate between Christians. Now, so here's what I will tell you. I had to know. I mean, if you're going to go to seminary, you have an opportunity to take Greek and Hebrew. What I love about how the translations are, so I'm just going to give you paint a story, paint a picture a little bit, so you can see why I'm a little less hung up on that now than I used to be. So translations are really designed to, and there's a ton out there. Here are the extremes. One, are they word for word taking the original language of the oldest manuscripts we have and just turning that original language into English? So those are word for word translations. And then there are some that are idea for idea translations. And here's why they even try to do that. If I said to you in English in 2024, last night the Warriors killed the Lakers. Well, if I was going to translate that 1,000 years from now, the Warriors killed the Lakers. Oh my gosh, what am I even talking about? There's nothing in there that says it's about basketball. And this word kill, I'm not using it
Right.
to mean they actually murdered them. I mean, it was just a blowout. Okay, so I would have to have, if I could, and I could translate it just straight up, word for word. And then you can just figure it out on your own. Good luck. Or I could just kind of translate it idea for idea. So the spectrum of translations really covers this. So here's what I do. On my bookshelf, I've got them all. And I use Logos. So Logos is it's a lot of work, but Logos is a computer program that kind of puts them side by side. Now, I wouldn't suggest that for you, but I would say, look, let's look at where you want to be in terms of translations, like a good word for word, and it reads more difficultly because it is word for word. And sometimes it feels like I wouldn't have said it that way, but in the original Greek, it's actually said exactly like, so they're trying to get it as close to word for word as they can, even though it kind of seems clumsy sometimes or not as easy to memorize, or like it doesn't feel like it's in 2024 English. So ESV, NASB, these are on that end of that word for word kind of translation. Well, then you move over to like the idea for idea. It's the NLT, for example, maybe New Living Translation. It's really a concept for concept. So it probably in that translation, it would say that the Warriors defeated the Lakers by 20 points. It would just give you the concept, would be idea for idea. Sometimes when I'm with Susie, I use my phone. I'll read it in the ESV. We're in Acts right now. We're in Acts chapter 15. So we will read it in the ESV, and then I'll read it to her in the NLT. So she's now both. But by the way, both of these translation groups, these committees, are not trying to deceive you. They're trying to get it so that you don't miss it. This is exact. If you were in the first century and you said it this way, this is what you would hear. This is what it would mean if they're doing idea for idea or word for word. And I think if you look at both of those, I usually just do the ESV and the NLT. I'll read it in the ESV first, the NLT second, call it a day. And that gets a good combination of the word for word translation, but it's really not because someone's trying to deceive me. They're written for different purposes. Like, for example, if I had teenagers, I would probably spend more time in the NLT. Although in my youth group, we always use the ESV. But I'm just saying, if I wanted it to feel like it was a little more accessible, I'd probably use the NLT. But again, what's great about them is they're going back to the best and most ancient manuscript evidence we have. And this changes every year because we find additional documents. So if you've got a translation that's several hundred years old, it won't be using as many ancient manuscripts as we have today. And sometimes those manuscripts, it's not just the ancient biblical manuscripts. Sometimes you find an ancient Greek manuscript from the first century that has nothing to do with the Bible, but they're using a biblical word. And it gives us better insight. Oh, that's what that word meant in the first century to this group. Now we can kind of go, okay, maybe so we're doing our best to kind of give it to you the way that it's really written. But here's what I would say about the story of Jesus that I think is so fascinating. If you had all these, but I would also say this to you, Noel, don't listen to me. and don't listen to Janelle, and don't listen to people who are secondary, tertiary, a billion sources removed. You have a text you could read if you wanted to know what Baha'u'llah, the prophet of the Baha'i faith, said about life. It's available to you. You don't need to talk to somebody who's a Baha'i. You could read the scriptures, Baha'u'llah, his writings. The same is true here. So what I'd like you to do is to say, hey, you know what? I'm at least going to read the New Testament before I kick it to the curb, because I just think that then you can make a decision based on what you're reading. I mean, do we really know who Jesus was or what he was like? I think I had to read the Gospels 4 or 5 times before I really got a good handle on the robust, because every author paints him like your mom would say one thing about you, your aunt would say another. They all give pieces of the overall puzzle of who Noel is. The same is true with the gospel authors, and so you have to kind of read them as a group and go, okay, because some are coming at it from a completely different perspective than others. Luke is he didn't know Jesus personally. He had to rely on eyewitnesses. His account is different than somebody like John, who calls him the one that Jesus loved. I mean, he really knew Jesus well. His view is slightly different than Luke's, and it's worth reading both. But I would say that you need to kind of read all of those before, and don't trust people who are teachers, because you don't need my spin on it. You just need to. I honestly think, and I'll say this, and maybe I'm being presumptuous, but I honestly think that if you will simply focus on who Jesus is in the 4 Gospels and read them, that you're going to fall in love with at least what he stands for, if not Jesus himself. And at some point, your view of who he is, you're going to surprise yourself, because you've heard a lot of things about Jesus that probably aren't even true. And as you read about him in the Gospels, you're going to just go, wow, either I didn't know that, or I didn't see that coming, or this surprises me. But you're going to learn something that I think will ultimately change the way you view Christianity as a whole. And I think that you're going to want to surround you. Here's one thing I've learned from the Gospels. It's humility. This is a worldview. The only theistic worldview that says you cannot know God or be in his presence by doing something. Do the 10 Commandments. Do Karma Yoga. Do the Eightfold Path. They're all do's. Do. And only Christianity says, no, you can't do it. And here's why. Anytime you think you can earn something, you will become proud of the fact that you earned it. It's a pride issue. This is the view that says, no, pride is not elevated. Humility is elevated. And you know that you love people who aren't full of themselves. You love humble people. Well, there's a view out there that'll make you more humble. And if you have not met Christians who kind of possess that humility, then you're probably not meeting Christians who have spent a lot of time reading the words of Jesus. So you read the words of Jesus. You become the expert. Don't let anybody else tell you they're an expert, including me. I just want, all I'm trying to do with you is to I guess, maybe motivate you to do that reading, to see who he is. And you can also see who everybody else is too. Before I was a Christian, when I was in high school, I had a sociology teacher who was a Baha'i. And so he gave me the writings of Baha'u'llah. I loved it, because I thought it was like fortune cookie wisdom. I found 2 or 3 things in there that I could use. I didn't think it was true, but I found some wisdom. I thought it was kind of cool, ancient, but I'm not a Baha'i, because to me it was all everything was a bunch of nonsense. It's all untrue, equally untrue. So why would I worry about it? But at the end, I want you to start to read it and see it for yourself. Be a good detective.